Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So, yes, I have a few more accessories to make. Now, I actually needed a few more toiletry items, but I got kind of caught up here and I decided to make a cake stand. Now, dolls, just bear with me. I'm trying to clip off this bale top so that it'll be flat enough for me to add the plate part of the cake stand. So I did sand it a little and it was smooth enough to give me a surface that would allow the plate part to be level. So I did add a little bit of my Loctite glue and then centered the plate portion and allowed it to dry. I think it turned out really cute, and here it is, dolls, a nice cake stand because you know we're going to need a cake soon. So let's go on to the featured part of the video. So I had some really pretty beads that I wanted to use. A friend of mine had sent me some, and I wanted to use them for Marva and Sterling's room. So, dolls, when I'm doing something like this, I just gather everything together, as many pieces that I have that I think I want to use. And I don't altogether know what I'm going to do until everything is out in front of me and I just play around with it for a while. And then as the ideas came to me, I began to assemble the pieces the way that they look like they would go well together. Now, this little bead came in a package from a really special friend of mine, and it fell apart in transit, so I just wanted to reassemble it to use it again in this setting. I hope she's watching. If you recognize this little bead, let me know. So while that's drying, I continued to play around with the rest of the little beads I had. Now, I know that beads come in all shapes and sizes, but when you're working with 12 scale, the smaller the bead, the better, because you definitely are able to notice the issues with scale when you begin to place your items in the scene, especially on shelves or tables or dressers. They just look out of place and they don't fit. So try to find or use beads that are really, really small because they look a lot better and they're a lot more in scale and they don't take up so much room on the surface of your tables, dressers, and shelves. So dolls, just always keep that in mind when you're choosing beads. And this is that same little bead, and I added a additional little pinkish seed bead to the top and a little brass pin to give the impression that that was the lid. Now, dolls, here's a quick example of what I mean. These two beads are beautiful, but they're actually kind of large. I like them a whole lot, but if I tried to add them to the dressing table, they would take up quite a bit of room, and this is an example of another one. So I'll save it for something else. Now here's an example of what I mean. I'm using that little silver piece to create like a tray for my dressing table. And if I were to use those bigger beads, I would only really be able to get one of them on. Now here's that little blue bead. I found a lid for it. So I put the Loctite glue on and I'm putting a pin through the little bead. Now, although it would have been fine with just the second bead, that little pin at the top just adds another layer of dimension. And although many times 3 beads look great, in this case, the 1 bead on top of this clear bead looks like a bottle. So you have to trust your eye in each assembly, just like this button and this flat bead look like a jar. And then here's another clear bead that looked nice with a bottom and a lid on top. So just play around, dolls. Now here I am back to playing with the trays. I found another little bitty mirror and I think it looks a little bit better. I like the shape and it gives a little extra room for more items. Now dolls, I just want you to look and see the size of the tiny mirror, and you see me trying to assemble bottles on the surface of the little mirror. Now if the beads are too large, I wouldn't be able to get that many on there. So always be conscious of your bead size. Now I did have a couple flat beads and some thumbtacks, and they look like jars to me. So here I am with the little glass mirror again, and I've decided to add a few pieces of nail art around the edges. Now I did use this technique before when I was making essentials for the dress shop. If you haven't seen that video series, definitely check that out. I will leave a link in the description. So it should only take a second for that Loctite glue to dry. So now let me see how many of my little perfume bottles I can get on here now that I have like a little rim or a perimeter on there. So that's 4, and I think I can get one more. So let me allow that to dry and show you how I made this little shelf. Now this is a remnant piece left over from the House of Miniatures grandfather clock, and since I already have the House of Miniatures clock, I decided to use this piece to make a shelf. So these little cutoffs were the miter cuts left over from a door frame, and I thought they'd be perfect as brackets for this shelf, but I did need to stain them. Laura, I'm sorry I didn't put on my gloves to stain these little pieces, but I didn't get much on my hands. Now, after I stained them, I decided to use the part that doesn't have the grooves in it because I felt like the plain side blended in better. Now, although I didn't show it, in addition to staining it, I did sand it a little to smooth off the rough edges, and then I added a thin bead of glue and then placed it at either side of the bottom part of the shelf and then allowed it to dry after removing the excess glue. It's just a very small element to give extra dimension to the scene. Now here, let me bring in the little tray. So you see I have 4 bottles and a jar, and they all fit neatly on the tray because the beads are small. Now, dolls, this is one of those moments that just when I thought it was complete, I saw something else. I started looking at the small space below the shelf between the 2 brackets. I felt like that would be the perfect place to put like a little towel bar. And it was reminded me of the area where I put the garment rack under the stairs. If you haven't seen that video, I will leave a link in the description for that too. So after I glued the little dowel between those 2 brackets, I added a small piece of a white baby washcloth. I dampened it with my water and glue solution and then shaped it to look like maybe somebody had just wiped their face or dried their hands or something like that. So don't neglect the details, dolls. Now, dolls, I have one more thing I wanted to share with you. Now, this photo or picture is really super old. I made this picture when I was a little girl. It was a part of my original Dollhouse collection. I always loved this picture of the ladies, and you can see here this picture frame. The miters are really, really gappy and crazy, but I've got this lovely frame that I never used, and it's the perfect size for this picture. And I struggled a little bit trying to determine whether I wanted to remove the frame, because dolls, I'm big on saving items to let me see my growth and how much I have developed as an artist. But in this case, I think I can break the rules because I think this picture would be perfect for Aunt Bess and Aunt Janie's house, that I could pretend that this was them when they were young women. And I think it's a really, really cute picture. It looks more like a painting. So I'm just gently taking my time to remove the old frame so I can reframe it with the mass-produced frame. And it's not that I think my frame is ugly or bad. I just want it to look, well, yeah, it is ugly and bad. But that's not the point here, dolls. I just want to reframe it so that I can use it in a very prominent place in the dress shop. And it's amazing how well this held up because that yellow cardstock is definitely from like 5th or 6th grade. So I'm just going over the picture with some Mod Podge in one direction. I'm going to allow it to dry and then I'm going to go across it in the other direction. And doing that will give the surface of the picture the illusion or impression that it was painted on canvas. And I got that tip from Era Bentley on Bentley House Miniatures. And now my canvas is all dry. You can see the little texture on it, and it fits perfectly inside this frame. It's funny, I've had this frame for years and I could never find a picture that fit. It's really funny how if you just give things a little time, they'll come together just the way they're supposed to. So now, as you see, I just added a little glue around the perimeter of the frame and just pressed my little old picture to the back of the frame and allowed it to dry. And I put my 1, 2, 3 block on it so it'll be nice and flat. Wow, I've always liked that picture, but with that new frame, it really looks official now. Now, dolls, if you've enjoyed this video today, definitely let me know in the comments. Also, like, share, and subscribe. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.